Hello, Skol Nation, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Horn Skoldiers podcast. I'm your host, Justin Ekstrom from the Grueling Truth Radio, covering my favorite team, Scott's favorite team. Last week you heard Austin, it was his favorite team, and I hope it is indubitably your favorite team, the Minnesota Vikings. This week we welcome back Scott Mink, the man that is just like you, a season ticket holder and the voice for the true Vikings fan.
I'm back, everyone, after my work trip to New York, which was awesome, but I'm surprised I still have a job. Austin killed it. He was almost as good as Case Keenum was this past week.
Yeah. He was not bad. I'm talking Austin, of course, because Case Keenum was out of this world and we will get talking about that because this week we'll be discussing the big win against the Bucs that you and I predicted them to lose in. The offense coming together, and then we'll look ahead to the big matchup against the Lions. That then leads us into Scott's extra point section. However, before we get into all that, we welcome in a variation of our opening segment that we have renamed
Just in Case You Missed It.
Changing it up. I like it, especially since it's still named after me. This section will still be dedicated to some of the news and notes floating around the internet. To start off, we will talk about the good. What do you got?
The good this week is our man Dalvin Cook, but before we get in that, it was renamed because Case Keenum's performance. We're combining Case Keenum and my co-host Justin's name, pun intended. But yeah, the good, Dalvin Cook, he's on pace to break AP's rookie rushing record through 3 games. He currently has 288 yards. AP was sitting at 271 yards. Everything is looking good for the Cookie Monster. What are your thoughts on Dalvin through 3 games?
You can't call him the Cookie Monster. That's Linville Joseph.
You know, we know he eats cookies. Linville eats cookies. Dalvin is the Cookie Monster. Or else he's cooking things up. I don't know, whatever one you want to have. He's on fire right now.
He is on fire, and there is only one cook in the kitchen. I am super stoked about him. I will eat crow to the day I die about him. Being a little upset that the Vikings drafted him, but he is proving me wrong. I get a little concerned throughout second and third quarter where it seems like he gets 1 yard, 2 yards, 3 yards, but then he breaks one off and totally redeems himself. He hasn't broken that 60-yarder yet, but I feel he's dang close every time he touches the ball.
I think this week was a good indication of what Dalvin is overall, where he has like 97 yards rushing and then a 70 yards receiving. If we can get that every single week, we are going to be feeling good about ourselves every single week as we're watching the Vikings.
That is exactly something that Austin brought up in your stead last week. Is his extra point section was all about, are we concerned that Dalvin is not catching the ball as much? And, well, then Dalvin Cook caught the ball a bunch of times and showed what he can do with it. And that's what we thought we were getting right away. And it came in no bigger of a time than against the Bucs, who were supposed to be a big-time defensive unit against running backs, held the Bears to 20 yards. Then Dalvin comes in, 97, and then, big catches, and he looked like what we drafted.
Yes, sir. So let's move on to the bad, because this is just our quick segment here. Sam Bradford, day-to-day. Zimmer did say in his press conference, as you know, I love press conferences, that he is still the starter when he is healthy. After Case's performance this past week, how do you feel you are feeling about Sam, Case, and then now there's even rumblings about Teddy even potentially coming back here shortly, but we kind of have like a QB roulette system, so let's hear what your take is on that.
Yeah, colleges run with 2 quarterbacks, sometimes 3 all the time. Why can't the pros do it, right? Just go with the hot hand. Can we do that?
I don't think it's ever been done, has it?
I don't know. I think
Wildcats there.
I think Philly tried it a little bit when their coach was out there that was trying all that Wildcat stuff, and with Chip Kelly when he was doing all that weird stuff. They were trying to do a multiple running back type deal, but I don't think that's the way we're going to go here. I agree with Zim. This is Bradford's team, but then you throw in, Case Keenum performing real well. I don't know what they're going to do. It's going to be, I'm glad I'm not in charge. Let's just say that.
Yeah, we'll get into more about Case's day a little bit later, but I do think it's interesting that Tim was so open and so adamant about saying that this is Bradford's team. Obviously, it's a week-to-week league. You had Case Keenum look like he was a first-time starter rookie quarterback against the Steelers, and then this week he had a little bit more preparation as all indications came, and he looked every bit the part, completing almost 400 yards passing. So I do think it's Sam's team, so we'll just hopefully that Dr. Andrews came back and said it's just bone on bone, and hopefully that's just week to week, and hopefully he can recover quicker.
Hear, 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 hear. Well, we did the good, we did the bad, and now we're doing the funny. This was a late ad. The mascot game gets rough. Can you explain to me what that was like since you were at the game?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite things. I work for a company called Cambria, so Cambria had their little mascot, Camby the dragon, there as well, so he participated. But the star of the show was none other than Goldie the gopher. He was all over Barstool Sports. He was all over Twitter, social media. Everyone was talking about him. He trucked a seventh grader from Egan. I think the kid actually was a little bit woozy to get up, but one play for the mascots on offense, one touchdown, and Goldie was everywhere as he was rolling the boat, similar to what P.J. Fleck was doing as he blew the Gallup horn. It was a gopher and gold-like show at halftime.
Yeah, I obviously didn't see much of it. I did see Twitter take a hold of it, and just funny. Good form, Goldie. Good form. I just hope the kid's okay. I hope the parents aren't too happy like everyone seems to be. Yeah, hopefully it was just in jest. He's got pads on, right?
Yeah, it's in good spirit. It's one of those things where it's humorous. I know, like, even the Atlanta Falcons mascot was there, and after the game, he opened up his jersey. He was wearing an American flag Speedo, pretending he was super hot and he was overheated. So just little things like that. I think it just brings a little humor to the game, especially with how serious things have been so recently. But I don't want to get any of that. Let's just move right into our main topic.
Yeah, we are definitely not a political show. We have never been. We will not be. We're going to stick with sports for right now. Everyone's going to do what they're going to do. We're going to do what we're going to do. And we are going to talk about the big win for the Vikes as the offense suddenly is ranked second overall, just behind the Patriots. Of course, the defenses they have faced have put forth rough outings, but not to take away from the job that the Vikings offense has done behind. I think Pat Shurmur deserves an award, deserves whatever he did to come back from the Steelers game and put up the monster performance that Case Keenum and then suddenly the second and third ranked receivers in the league in yardage and Diggs and Thielen did. Because holy smokes, was that a big flip of the coin, twist of fate, whatever, because woe is me was the term, and then all of a sudden, holy smokes, we have an MVP on our hands. What was the feeling like there?
It was electric. I know that a lot of the athletes, the coaches and all that, were talking about how good the home fans are and how it's like home field advantage. I think the NFL.com even did a story about how important Vikings fans are and how loud it gets in the stadium and how we can kind of conduct that stuff. But yeah, Shurmur on offense was pretty awesome. He did everything that we want to see. He changed up the plays. We were throwing on that, I think it was like the second drive where we had a holding by Riley Reef. We put us back to like 3rd and 12, and we still went out and we got a first down. That's something we didn't see last year. We were throwing past the first line to gain, so that was something that was exciting to see. And again, I think it all pivoted on like that first pass that Keenum hit to Adam Thielen, where it looks like Thielen's arms gets raked, and he still ends up making like a one-handed catch with his left hand, falling to the ground. And that was something that set the tone for the whole game. It seemed like we came out, we punched him in the face right away, and we didn't kind of slow down.
And big props to Austin Irwin, co-host last week. He actually said they need to open up the run game by passing deep and passing often and getting spread out, and that's exactly what happened. The young kid has some smarts. It's just I didn't expect to ever see that type of beginning in this game. Like I said earlier, you and I both picked against them. I still picked against them all the way to the end, and then they proved me incorrect, which I am fine by that. But, Case Keenum, I am actually at a loss for words with never happens, especially on a radio show because I'm supposed to talk. But, I mean, I did not expect that. Again, let's do a vote. Raise your hands if you thought Case Keenum was going to throw for 369 yards and a bunch of touchdowns. Okay, now slap your hand because you are being a liar.
And we can't see you because we're still on the radio.
Yeah, same thing. We can't see you. So don't do that.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the simple fact of how important staying healthy throughout the year is. So Tampa Bay came into the game with several injuries. Obviously, their number one corner wasn't available. So I think we kind of had that going into the game, and there was a plethora of injuries throughout the game, and it seemed like we were just kind of picking on them a little bit. And we were hitting on everything. We played almost like a near flawless game to their injuries and their inability to kind of make things happen and move the ball down the field on offense. So that to me kind of is the story and the tale of the tape. And the one thing that I wanted to point out, because I wasn't on the show last week, but in the Steelers game, Case Keenum seemed like he was playing a game of Madden, where you have the guy who doesn't really know how to play Madden, so he takes like 30, 40-yard drops, and he just keeps pedaling back because he wants to avoid coverage or getting sacked. That's what it reminded me of. This week, Case did an amazing job of staying in the pocket, stepping up in the pocket, hitting throws in stride. The timing was on point. And the offensive line, in fact, did a way better job this week against Tampa Bay than they did against the Steelers. I also think it helps out when you have running backs like Dalvin Cook, Latavius Murray, who are able to kind of block and support the passing game, not only on doing like quick dump out passes, but the fact that they're able to stay in and chip. Because they had a nasty little defensive end. Gerald McCoy is one of the top in the NFL. We kind of kept him pretty quiet throughout the whole night.
Yeah, I think he had a little bit of a nagging injury going on through the end. I don't know what it was that they were showing, but he came out a couple times and he did not look like himself. I know Pat Elflein didn't have the best game in the world, but I mean, he held one of the best nose tackles in the entire league to no sacks. I mean, look at Case Keenum, 0 sacks this time. His 2 sacks week before cost 21 yards or 22 yards, something like that. You cannot say enough about Case Keenum and like his moving of the pocket and kind of manipulating that. He looked like, a 7 or 8 year pro, like he's been doing it, been a starter for 8 straight years and looked good. Deep ball every once in a while. I mean, fluttered a little bit, but it got to where it had to go.
I also think it's important to show, just talk about how good our receivers have been so far. I mean, you said it earlier, we have the number 2 and the number 3 ranked receivers in the NFL right now, only behind Antonio Brown. I mean, Diggs has his occasional drop that he'll have where you kind of just scratch your head and you're like, you're such a good player, how are you dropping that? But he is looking and sounding and acting every bit like the face of the franchise right now. And then you just have Thielen, who's just reminds me a lot of Larry Fitzgerald, where he's just going to go in there, he'll do his job, he'll stay quiet. The only complaint I have against Adam Thielen is he wears those yellow gloves every time I think there's a flag on the field. I'm talking to my dad, and I'm like, why is there so many flags? But really, it's just Adam Thielen's bright yellow gloves. So I don't know how he's able to get that. But our receiving game is way underrated, and it's amazing how we could have 2 out of the top 3 in the NFL right now.
Oh, and guess what? We get a big part after this week coming back when we get another receiver added to that. We could have one of the best trios in the league. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the way Floyd was looking in preseason, add that to the way Thielen and Diggs, oopsie, all of a sudden we have an offense that will move the ball at will. And then Dalvin Cook, all of a sudden I am like an actual fan.
What about Jarius Wright?
Say that to his face. No, Jarius Wright, we did have a sighting. He had a touchdown. That was nice. I just don't think he's going to that's going to be another one. I'm glad that I am not the one making a call because somebody will not be participating in football once Mr. Floyd comes back.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting to see how they circumnavigate that roster position as bringing him back up. And then Treadwell has been getting a lot of run right now. He hasn't had a lot of catches. I think he only had one this past week on I think it was 1 catch for 1 yard, slight little drag on a 3rd and long that he caught and got tackled right away. But it looks like he's going to be the one that's going to be seeing less playing time. But that's, I don't know who they're going to kind of have. But again, I'm with you. I don't know who they're going to cut, and I'm glad I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, like you said, it looks like one of those two is going to have a big performance to turn the coach's eye towards them this week. And maybe it'll be Treadwell, maybe it'll be Wright. I don't know, but Wright had the touchdown on a nifty little play, and Treadwell is like, he doesn't even seem to be blocking that well. When you go back and look at the film, it's just, he's not even using his big body like you think he would. He did have one nice block on one of Dalvin Cook's runs, but just, he's not the consistent blocker like I thought he was going to be coming out of college. And I'm not saying he's a miss yet, because maybe, towards the end of this season, he'll catch fire. I don't know. But as of right now, we don't need him. We have Thielen and Diggs just balling out.
Yeah, it's a great situation to be in. While you're on the conversations with misses, I just want to ask you, as we switch over to the defensive side of the ball, what are your thoughts on Trey Waynes? I know there's been some talks about some people really love him, some people don't like him. He doesn't show up very often. This week he showed up. He had a pick. I also think the Andrew Sandejo interception was largely due to Trey Waynes as he was coming across the middle. I think it was his own coverage, and he traded off and took out Jackson, and then Sandejo just caught the ball right in his breadbasket. So I do think he had a kind of an up and down game, but what are your thoughts on Trey Waynes, and more importantly, what are your thoughts on the rotation of the cornerbacks in general?
It's super scary to me, because the only reason why Trey Waynes got that pick is because it was so underthrown by Jameis Winston. And if my memory serves me correct, they were just completely picking on him, and they were going all over the field against him, no matter who he was up against. He was, he'd make the solo tackle, good job, but then, a whole bunch of yardage. And until that interception, it looked like, oh boy, this is not going to be good. Gets that interception, they stop picking on him. And stop me if you heard this before, but it looks like Andrew Sandejo, they were picking on his side of the field as well, which, I mean, you should if Harrison Smith is covering the other side, but there was a reason why those two were all over the ball, is because the ball was being thrown in their zone or in their area, or I don't know. I still have trouble trusting Waynes one-on-one. I still have trouble with Sandejo. I don't know what his issue is. He can lay the wood, but if you're out of position, how are you going to lay the wood? And we didn't see him out of position much. He was instrumental in that last-ditch effort interception that now I'm escaping, that Harrison Smith got. Yeah, but they were picking on his side of the field. Like, eventually he had to make a play.
Yeah, I think Sandejo probably had one of his best games as a pro this week. He had a lot of hits. He was an impact player because he was, I mean, I don't know how Adam Humphrey got up. I don't know how Cameron Brake got up a couple times. Even Mike Evans on that pick with Harrison Smith, it seemed like Sandejo went high and just kind of hit his helmet with the ball, popped it straight up. Harrison got the pick. We sealed the game. But I do think Sandejo did play really well. The thing that I'd like to see a little bit too is, and talk about, I guess, is more about the cornerback rotation, where I know that we don't know all the plays. I'm sitting up in the stands. I watch the games afterwards on NFL Game Pass. But I also think about like Trey Waynes, and a lot of those catches, some of those were in zone coverage where he's just playing a flat and they kind of find the window. But yeah, again, that the one Deshaun Jackson beat him. He turned around, he ran as fast as he could, and he high pointed the ball and undercut Jackson on that first interception. So he was beat if the ball would have been placed in the right spot. But yeah, all indications. I mean, Jameis forces the ball to a lot of his receivers. A lot of them are really tight windows. Jameis is known for making a couple mistakes, and we just capitalized on those this week. And overall, I think it was a great team effort. I mean, anytime you have a 3-0 turnover ratio, you're going to probably win majority of the games.
Yeah, like you said, the rotation too. Like with Trey Waynes in there, he didn't exactly steal the job or solidify his spot. It's just that Tremaine Brock played so poorly when he was put in there that I don't think he's going to be losing his position as that outside corner anytime soon if Tremaine Brock is the guy, quote unquote, second stringer.
Yeah, Zim talked about Tremaine Brock in his press conference a little bit about how he's still trying to work on getting Tremaine Brock to work on his fundamentals that way that Zimmer wants him to work on them. So on that touchdown that Deshaun Jackson had against Tremaine Brock, if you watch it, he's in the right position. He just couldn't find the ball. It could have looked kind of silly because he's sitting there just looking back at Jameis, and then Jackson just jumps over top of him, grabs the touchdown, kind of shoves them. They were jarring at each other a little bit, but yeah, I think there's definitely a learning curve to Zim's defense, and especially with the cornerback position. And we've seen that over time. Mackenzie Alexander took a while. Trey Waynes took a while. I mean, even Xavier Rhodes took a while to kind of develop into the player that he is right now. But I mean, if I could say anything about Zimmer's defensive prowess, I mean, you just have to look at what Xavier Rhodes has done to the first 3 games. I mean, it wouldn't be the proper Horn Skoldiers podcast if we didn't bring up the fact that in week 1 he held Thomas to 2 receptions for 22 yards. In week 2 he held Brown to 3 receptions for 28 total yards. And then this week against Mike Evans, he held him to 5 receptions for 53 yards. I mean, he had a soundbite on sound effects just kind of saying roads are closed. Roads are closed, and that's what Zimmer's hopefully going to do with the rest of the guys. Hopefully we can have Trey Waynes step up a little bit. Hopefully we have Brock kind of prove himself. Mackenzie Alexander had a couple good plays in there where he broke up some Adam Humphries passes, but mainly just a special teamer. But, yeah, I think the rotation, it's good when it's working, but then it's also sometimes people see it as, we just pulled Trey Waynes, he got benched, but really it's just a rotation kind of thing.
Well, how scared are you when you see 29 come off the field kind of limping, holding a shoulder, or kind of holding a knee, or limping just a little bit? And does the whole entire place kind of do the...
Yes.
I figured so, because I do that at home. When I see him, I'm like, he's not in there. He's not in there. 29's not in there. Why? How come Xavier Rhodes he's not in there? And I kind of get a little scared, and then so far the last 2 weeks was the same thing, where he came out and then he's back a couple plays later, and man, it just shows how detrimental he is to this defense, because holding big name guys like that to however many yards they get, and which doesn't seem significant at all. With Antonio Brown is the best receiver in the league. It might not even be arguably. He just is, because look at his yardage with being shut down by Xavier Rhodes. He's eaten against everyone else except for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, yeah, I guess I would ask you, is he the most important player we have on defense? Or I guess on the team overall? Because the only other player that I've ever done that with is when Adrian Peterson went down, and you're just like, oh, shoot, there goes the rest of our offense.
Yes.
Is Xavier Rhodes that type of player on defense?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think if we lost Everson, I think we could have Brian Robeson. We have a position flexibility there. The only other guy I would say is Harrison Smith at safety, just because he just does everything. And then I don't know. I can't think of anyone else. I mean, Dalvin's playing out of his mind right now, but he hasn't been around long enough for me to kind of have that same feeling. But yeah, I think Xavier Rhodes might be the best player we have on our team.
Yeah, it's scary to say that, because Zim's like the rotational guy. He likes his defensive quarterback. He likes his cornerbacks kind of rotating around. But when you have Xavier Rhodes in there, it just seems like the pieces fit so much better. Like it's like one of those puzzle pieces that you're not. Oh, where's it go? Where's it go? Where's it go? Boom! That's where it goes. 29. He belongs there, and that's where he's got to stay. Because I have a bad feeling when he's not on there.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Just a little, not quite off topic, but did you see that tweet about him? He's like, when you shut down a big name receiver and the restaurant you go to gives you this, and it was a picture of like 2 cheesecakes, and it said Mike Evans who?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if that was from him or if that was from someone else. I couldn't kind of find the source on that, but yeah, that was hilarious.
I thought he was the first person to tweet it, but you never really know. But obviously he didn't say what restaurant, because then you and I would be there because we'd have to say his name on our podcast a whole bunch of times. And a name that we used to say a lot, and we still do, is Danielle Hunter. Are you at all concerned with him not having a sack yet? I got a little bit of my answer after yours, but I want to hear what you think.
I would say yes, because I feel like a lot of the offensive is scheming towards Everson Griffin. The one reason that I would lean no is just because I feel like our defensive tackles have been also sucking up a lot of players. So, the fact that he's maybe free on the outside, they don't seem to be chipping off of him. I would assume that he would be getting more sacks than he currently is. But maybe he's kind of feeling the pressure of being a starter versus just a backup, where last year he could just come in on third down situations, pin his ears back, and go after the quarterback. Now we have to try and set up moves, do a little bit more creative things that you see Everson Griffin do, where Everson Griffin does power rush, sets up the spin, and you got the sack. So I think it might be one of those things where he's still trying to learn how to be a starter.
I think, my take on it is, and I'm not, I'd say about 70% concerned. I'm not 100% concerned yet, because his run defense, his angles, his tackling angles, and fundamental stuff like that seems to be way better than it was last year. When you're a starter, it's more than just rushing after the quarterback. You expect the DNs to get 3-4 sacks by game 4, like Everson Griffin. He's having an all-pro type season already, like we were hoping to see. But Danielle Hunter doesn't quite have that sack yet. It's just he's doing everything else right. You're not seeing him be out of position as often. And I think eventually, hopefully this week, we see maybe a 1.5, 2.5 sack game, and we come away with a big win.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the Lions. They went out, and it was a weird game. I think there was a lot of weird games in the NFL this year, or this week, I should say. A lot of strange things, especially Pittsburgh losing to Chicago. You had Jacksonville beating the Ravens by like 44-7 in London. Just funky stuff. And then the Lions game, it comes down to, is it a touchdown at the end of the game by Golden Tate, or did he not get in? Did he get in? How did it all shake out? He had 8 seconds left. The refs come back, say, he didn't get in, and we have a 10-second runoff. Game over. Atlanta holds off. So funky game with the Lions. The Motor City Kitties usually are lucky, but this week they were not.
I don't know if they would think they're usually lucky, because it seems like all those not catches, in or out, going back a few seasons, they seem to have at least one a year. Playoffs against Dallas with that Dez Bryant catch, no catch. We got another one where Megatron had one in the end zone where, all intents and purposes, it looked like a complete catch, and then it wasn't a catch. That would have been the game winner. It doesn't seem, it always seems like the Lions are on this. It looked to me it was the right call. Now that they overturned it and you got to look at it, got to digest it for a couple days, it was the correct call. It just, fate again took out the Lions. And, I'd feel bad for them, but I'd rather face them 2-1 than 3-0 right now.
I just want to know, how long it would take for them to run 4 yards, get down, snap the ball, and have Matt Stafford do a QB sneak or something just to try and punch it in. I just feel like the 8 seconds is an awful long time to just kind of call the game. But, they're in our division. They lost. We'll take it. We'll see Atlanta later on in the season. But they were getting smoked to start the beginning of the game. I don't know if you watched it. I watched it back on NFL Game Pass. They did not look good in the beginning of the game, and then everything switched when Glover came up, read the eyes of Matt Ryan, and did a pick six, and then it was all new ball game. As I feel like the Lions defense kept them in the game more than the offense did. They ended up having 3 turnovers against Matt Ryan. 2 of them were not his fault. The first one to Glover Quinn was his fault. Obviously, I just said he kind of telegraphed that one as Glover picked it up and took it to the house. But two of the other ones later in the game were off his receivers' hands, deflections, pop-ups. They get the ball, and then no more Atlanta Falcons on offense. So hopefully we could do something similar to that this week where we're the ones that are causing the turnovers, not the ones giving up the ball.
How confident are you feeling this Vikings offense against Detroit defense that held Matt Ryan to under 300 yards and picked him off 3 times, including a pick 6?
I think if we game plan like we did this past week, I think we're sitting pretty good. Again, I don't know who our quarterback is. I know Bradford's day-to-day. I don't know if they even announced. I don't think the injury report comes out until Wednesdays. So I don't even know who's starting at quarterback right now. But after Case played last week, and if we're able to get the ball out of his hands, if we're able to do quick passes to Delvin, keep them honest. Because one thing that the Lions defense is not good at is tackling with the first defender. If you watch the game back, it seemed like that the running backs and receivers for the Falcons were able to break through that first tackle, and then they would get to the next line of scrimmage. But again, I wasn't impressed with the Lions defense that much. Again, it was kind of 2 gift-wrapped turnovers. Glover Quinn did make a play on that pick, but I'm feeling pretty confident about it. I know Ziggy Ansah is a monster. He's going to give our defensive line or our offensive line a run for their money. But if we keep a clean pocket, I feel pretty confident.
For me, I was watching that game again on NFL League Pass or some of that All-22 stuff that they throw on YouTube. Some of the Ziggy Ansah, he did not have any sacks. He did not have any tackles, but he looked like he was taking the game over until he got hurt. He was dealing with something, just like he looks like a possessed man-child out there. And if he's hurt, I think if say he is not 100%, Ziggy Ansah, like we've seen in the past, I think the Vikings can exploit that and can use that to their advantage because, even though he doesn't have a sack, he didn't have a tackle, he's not even in the stat sheet. It just looked like he was all over every single play, maybe half a step behind, kind of like our boy Daniil Hunter. But just, if we can take him out of there, I think our offense can scheme and do just enough against this defense that, susceptible to big gains, basically that yak attack type thing because they can't tackle for anything. I suddenly like our chances.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you watch what Atlanta Falcons, the offense does, it's very similar to what we kind of want to do, especially what we did this past week where we kind of have that feature back that has the ability to run and catch. Obviously, Atlanta has 2 of them with Freeman and Coleman. Delvin, and then, Jarek McKinnon does have the capabilities of catching on the backfield as well and could be a spill for Delvin. So I feel like that game plan is very similar to what Atlanta runs is what we want to run. I felt like through the first half anyways, Atlanta was controlling that game. And I feel like if we keep consistent with quick passes, we get the ball out of our hands quickly. We do have the capabilities of doing some of those slant routes and those comeback routes, which I think are effective against Detroit and their corners. But they do have good secondary. They do have a very good secondary. I was just looking it up right now, and Glover Quinn is leading the league in interceptions with 2 right now. So they do have something that we need to be cautious about. But yet again, I do feel confident if we do have the right game plan going into it and we have run to set up the pass, we should be pretty good because Tampa Bay this past week was biting on almost every single play action fake we had. If we get the Lions to do something similar, we could have our way with them.
Yeah, I just like the way the Vikings are moving the pocket and getting those young offensive linemen kind of out in a little bit of space and giving them where they can see like the defensive linemen coming at them a little bit better than doing that one-on-one in the trenches type thing. I don't know what they saw or why they're doing that as well better this year than they were last year. I have no clue, but I love seeing that roll into the right where all 5 offensive linemen have all the defensive linemen to their right, and then their Case Keenum has a perfect lane to the left on one of those nice corner drag routes that our receivers have been, firing on all cylinders, and the receivers aren't that wide open all the time. I mean, there's been a blown coverage here and there because of that double moves and biting on all those fakes, but I mean, Keenum and then Bradford in game 1, they're just hitting kind of throwing our guys open, something that Vikings faithful are not used to seeing.
Yeah, that's exactly true. I mean, we're not used to seeing that at all. But I do think the other thing that I wanted to just touch on quickly is how nicely I feel that Pat Shurmur's kind of introduced C.J. Ham into the fold. I think that him at fullback, you saw him have a catch this week where he kind of juked one, got a first down. But that's something interesting where you put the fullback out there and he can catch the ball. Obviously, he has running back capabilities that when he played in college in Duluth. They asked him to beef up. I think he's just another one of those weapons that allow us. We could be more traditional, like you say, where we're just doing the power running, what we're used to. But again, he allows us to have the flexibility to not just stay in that situation, and we can kind of, fullback dive. He got a touchdown a couple weeks ago. This week he catches a pass for 10 yards and gives us a first down. So I think it just allows our offense to be way more creative than what we have been used to seeing. And again, we started off the conversation this week talking about how Pat Shurmur had an excellent game call, and I feel like he hopefully can continue that into the Detroit game.
I agree. I'm excited for what our offense can do against this defense, but what can this defense do against an offense that has a pretty potent offensive line? They were able to let Riley Reif go because they have a few other guys come in and step up. Graham Glasgow, a few of those big boys up front are purple people eaters, so to speak. Are they going to get to Matthew Stafford?
Yeah, I know one of the guys that signed with the Detroit Lions is Ricky Wagner. We were talking about him in the offseason about how he would be a nice fit with the Vikings, but he ended up signing with Detroit. That allowed Riley Reif to go. And we picked him up. But, yeah, we were in the Ricky Wagner kind of sweepstakes to say, and we'll see him this week on that offensive line. But, yeah, I do think we're going to have the capabilities again with Stafford. The one thing that I am concerned about with the Lions, and they do a really good job on this, we talked about how Xavier Rhodes has the ability to shut down number one receivers. And I don't know if Detroit has a traditional number one receiver. They have a couple of receivers that you consider like good enough receivers to move the chains. Obviously, Golden Tate can have his games. Lewis can have good games. But yet again, I don't see them as like a true number one. Stafford does a good job of passing and spreading the ball around. And majority of the things, and this is where I'm going to spin it to you, but the thing that I'm concerned about is when they line up in trips left, trips right, one of those two, and we don't have the capabilities of covering them, especially if they have the two dynamic running backs, Theo Riddick and Abdullah. I think that they're going to have the flexibility of kind of getting one-on-one matchups with Anthony Barr on the running backs, or we're going to have to be doing dime packages a lot where we're going to have the Mackenzie Alexanders in the slot, where they're going to have that Golden Tate on that inseam route where they can kind of block it up and let them run for a couple of yards. So that's the one play that I'm concerned about I'm seeing. I know Detroit runs that a lot. And then in addition, they have that Eric Ebron, who's a pretty decent tight end in himself.
Yeah, they come at you a whole bunch of different ways with those trips and five wide and, not necessarily all just wide receivers, five wide either. And, they have that offensive line that can protect Stafford without having any chips off the line. And all of a sudden you have five guys out there that you got to cover. And right now that may be an issue, just like you said. That's where Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr and Ben Gideon and those guys, they're just going to have to know their role and stay home and, do what they got to do. I think bumping that trips to the right or trips to the left, I think getting one of those guys off kilter so they can't run their entire route, that's something that Zim will probably start preaching, hit somebody at the line right away, make sure, because if you take out one of those receivers, well, all of a sudden you have two guys that can be easily covered and not all the routes can be ran, and that's going to be something that will be interesting to see. But I think getting to Matthew Stafford up the middle is going to be one of those, that is going to be the issue. Like if we can hit him right up the middle and then have him kind of patter-footed Eli Manning style or something where he just kind of runs off to the left or runs off to the right, we may see Danielle Hunter get his first sack.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't really answer your question, so I appreciate you talking about the AA getting to Matthew Stafford. I think that was your original question. I kind of spun it off to the fact. I think I spun it off to the fact that I'm kind of concerned about the fact that I feel like he's going to get the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. I don't know if we're going to have a ton of sacks this week, especially if they do those trips to the left, trips to the right. I don't know if we can blitz Harrison Smith like we like to do. Or the one thing that I think we could potentially do, and that could be sneaky creative, and we've seen Zimmer's defenses do it in the past, is where we drop that defensive end. So instead of having Danielle Hunter rush to the quarterback, if we kind of see that trips to the left and trips to the right, we drop Danielle Hunter into that open space, and hopefully he can knock them all down, or maybe even the big fellow with the muscles on top of muscles can take it to the house. I see that might be an interception. I think would be a great way for Danielle Hunter to get off the keister and start producing this year.
Yeah, I think it all kind of started last year with a safety, didn't it, against Carolina, and then went uphill, downhill, whatever's positive after that. Maybe something like that. Maybe he gets a safety, or maybe a fumble recovery for a touchdown. Or I don't think he's having a bad season. I know a lot of people, a lot of purple are like, where is he? Where is he? What's going on? I think he's a little more, everyday type of role. Like, how many seasons in a row did it take forever for B-Rob to get his first sack? A few years ago, I think it took until like week 8 or week 9. I mean, you got to do everything else right. And it seems like he's doing everything else right. And he's just like half a step behind. Like even Everson Griffin's sack, on Sunday, he was right behind him to kind of finish it off, even though Everson had it well under control. He's just half a step behind. But I think, if he gets a sack on the first series or something like that, and then the Lions are like, ooh, we got to look out for this guy too. Well, then the big boys in the middle can start eating. One name that I haven't heard much about is Tom Johnson. We got to get him in the middle, get him going. Get Linville Joseph. He's been having an outstanding year. It's just the guy next to him hasn't been, whether that be B-Rob or Tom Johnson or Shamar Stephan or whoever they have in there, who did have a sack this Sunday. But, one of those guys has to step up when everyone else is doing their job.
Yeah, I think Shamar Stephan, that was his first career sack in the NFL, 7th-round draft pick. He's like a gamer. I was trying to listen to what people were talking about him, and everyone was super happy about him getting a sack. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Linval Joseph, I think, leads the league in like stopping the rush or plugging the hole on rushing downs or something like that. I was reading some weird statistic on Pro Football Focus about that kind of thing. So Linval is fitting the bill. I mean, everyone that we paid this offseason, Everson's coming off big year. Xavier's looking great. Linval's looking great. But yeah, there are some of those little, those other people that we need to kind of have step up on the defensive side of the ball. We talked about Sandejo doing it this past week. Stephan got it. But yeah, the defensive tackle position definitely needs to step up. And then if we do roll out a little bit more wider packages, if it's a dime or if it's a nickel package this week, Bedginia needs to step up a little bit, or even Emmanuel Lamour, I think, played 9 to 10 snaps this past week, and he saw some running game time in there. Those are the type of players, the guys that we don't normally talk about are going to have to make 1 or 2 splash plays in order for us to keep our season coming and going, because we're entering a pretty pivotal point in our season. I know it's early. I know it's only week 4, but we look ahead to the schedule. We have 3 division games in a row. This week we, obviously play the Detroit Lions, then we go to the Chicago Bears, and then we go to the Green Bay Packers. And it's one of those things where if we lose all 3, we're kind of sitting in a crappy situation because these are all divisional games. If we're able to win all 3, we're sitting in a very good situation going into the rest of the season. So, again, this is a very pivotal point, and we need everyone to kind of play at their best and stay focused. And hopefully we can be on the right side of this and, win 3 straight.
Yeah, we gotta win this one to erase the 2 last-second losses last year, man. The kicking game was not our friend, and it was something we kind of escaped. speaking of the kicking game, is we will have a Jeff Locke sighting. Is that advantage Vikings or advantage Lions having him out there punting?
I don't know. I mean, we talked about it. He had a pretty good, decent year last year. He improved, but he was never one of those guys that consistently shifted the field of play. He wasn't top in the league and pinning it within the 20. I would say it's advantage Marcus Sherrills is what I would say.
And he happens to be wearing purple, so I'd say advantage Vikings. That's Scott's call, advantage Vikings. And another thing that will be Scott's call, I know both of us predicted the Lions to lose this game against the Vikings, and we would be 2-2 after this. But as of now, if the Vikings win, they'll be 3-1, and we'll both be pleasantly surprised with our first 4 games. But what are you seeing? What are you thinking? How does this play out?
I see this as another Vikings win. I do think this is going to be more of a shootout than it would be normally. I do think that their offense of the Detroit Lions has a couple of players that are going to have potential big games. I feel like they set up well against us. And, traditionally the past couple of years they have been dogfights. They haven't been easy wins for one side or the other. Obviously, you brought it up where last year if Blair Walsh would have just kicked it in the end zone, maybe they wouldn't have had the opportunity or the time to drive down the field and, have a game-winning field goal to end it. So those are the kind of things that we got to avenge. I do think this is a win for the Vikings. Are you looking for a game score, or are you just looking to see if I still think it's a victory?
Hey, you don't need to do the game score. We have been a little bit, but you sticking with the victory. I'm sticking with the victory. I'm fairly confident about it, but that defense kind of scares me, and their offense definitely scares me. Especially since we're giving up all this yardage and then all of a sudden being bailed out by 1 or 2 big plays. I'd rather see a little bit of consistency in the passing defensive game. And it's scary, but I still see I don't know. I'll give a score, 25-13.
25-13. Okay, I see where you're going there. I think I'm going to go a little bit higher than that. I think it's going to be something in the lines of a 31-27 game.
Ooh. You did say a little more of a shootout. I think defense might get on track a little bit here. Maybe TJ Lang will have one of those hammy injuries, something like that. Maybe the offensive line of Detroit gets a little hampered by something, and the big boys eat. I'm hoping to hold them to under 15, under 20, something like that, and the Vikings get themselves a victory.
Let's do it. Let's go into next week. I'm excited for Sunday. It's another home game for us. Me and my dad will be going again. It's going to be a good time. Hopefully everyone's out there doing the Skol chant, hollering, and we'll have a good time.
I will be getting ridiculously happy every time CJ Ham gets the ball, because no human being should have cheered as loud as I did when he had an 11-yard reception. I was just like, yeah! And everyone around me was like, what? What is just normal? I'm like, CJ Ham! It's Ham!
I really thought you were going to say I'm going to get ridiculously drunk. I'll take loud. I'll take loud, too.
I'm okay with I don't think I'll be drinking too much. Family day and all, having sober fun, but I'll definitely tip back a few Burnix type of beverages. And speaking of Burnix, this of course is their section they sponsor. And Burnix Distribution of Waite Park, Minnesota, of course, distributes Miller Lite. And Miller Lite is the official beer sponsor of the Minnesota Vikings. And they sponsor this section that we like to call
Extra Points.
Nailed it. Just like Burnix does with their distribution deals. What do you got for us? This is the time where Scott gets to pick something that has been floating around in his fantastic brain and puts me on the spot. What do you have for me this fine evening, Mr. Mink?
So we touched on it briefly. It revolves around our good friend and defensive end, Danielle Hunter. So Everson Griffin's currently sitting 4th overall in the league in sacks with 4. However, Danielle Hunter, as we said, is currently sitting with 0. How many sacks do you think Danielle Hunter will have to end the season?
You're not doing a weekly one for me? You're making me use my abacus?
Big picture.
Big picture. Okay, I get my abacus out. Okay, so we're on week 4. I say I'm still going 10.
Double digits.
I still say double digits. Maybe not the 14 or 15 I had envisioned, but he gets off the schneid. I am predicting right now he gets off the schneid with 1 to 2 sacks this week. Lions do not give up that many sacks. They're usually fairly consistent. Like I said, that offensive line is a little scary. Big meat and potatoes type guys. A bunch of guys that we actually tried picking up. But I say Danielle Hunter, he'll start, and he'll end with 10. Exactly 10.
I'm going to go with the under on this. I just feel like that's almost 1 a game for the rest of the season. There's 16 games in the season. We've already had 13 games left, so you're predicting almost one a game.
Yes.
I am going to do about 8.5. And I just feel like the half, just because I want to give half more to Everson Griffin, just because he's playing outstanding right now. But I'm going to go under on that. I think he has a slow start. I do think he'll have a couple throughout the year. I just don't know if 1 a game to end the season is the correct pace. But I hope you're right and I'm wrong, and I hope there's more sacks than less sacks. And last year he had 12.5. It'd be amazing if he can even get to that number. That would be 1 sack per game for the rest of the year. So we'll see. Maybe we'll do an over and under. I don't know. Are we doing a trivia question on this one, or are we just doing straight up just me and you? Burnix distribution extra points question of the week.
I think we just do the Burnix distribution extra points question of the week. We obviously want listeners to be retweeting that kind of thing and doing all that. But as of now, I think our in-game deal is working pretty well. Definitely get your hands on one of these. What have we been calling them again? I haven't heard you say it for a while, Scott.
Burnix beanies.
A Burnix beanie with nice Vikings on it, a nice little ball on top. I think everyone should have one of these. It is fantastic because it's getting chilly in Minnesota, especially if you live northern Minnesota. It is going to get downright cold here soon. You will want one of these. And I have it on good authority that after these, we are getting maybe some long sleeve t-shirts. Miller Lite Vikings type deal. But I hope you tune in nevertheless next week when we recap, hopefully, a big win against the Lions and prelude to another divisional game that will be on Monday Night Football again against the vaunted Soldier Field going the Bears, Chicago Bears. When we face them on Monday Night Football after this, hopefully recapping big win. Next week we'll talk about what we feel can happen and should happen against the Bears. And, yeah, anything to add, Scott?
No, let's just go out there and get a victory.
Yeah, I could go for that. We got to defend the home turf. Right now, undefeated at home. Stay that way. Please, boys.
Defend the North.
Defend the North. Well, that is a wrap to another episode of the Horned Skoldiers. Be sure to tune in next week when we are talking about the big win and previewing Game 5 against the Bears on Monday Night Football at Soldier Field. Be certain to follow me if you feel like it, Justin Ekstrom on Twitter, at the SportsCrib21. Follow my work at www.thegruelingtruth.net. My co-host and Viking season ticket holder, Scott, can be found on Twitter at SGMENK. All caps. That kind of turns into like a cheer. Be aggressive. You got to be aggressive. Until then, Skoldiers, Scott, and I are out.